Welcome to the Popular Man Album Club. I'm your host, Jay. With me today, I have my co-host, DeLon. What's up, DeLon?
Assalamu alaikum, Brother Jordan.
And guest starring today on the episode, we have the contributor to the SoFlo Sound website. We got Tommy with us. What's up, Tommy?
Greetings. Hope everyone's doing well.
We have a Popular Demand contributor, frequent Popular Demand contributor. We got the homie Daniel with us. What's up, Daniel?
Yo, support your local museums.
Do that. And then join us for the first time ever, we have a Dallas Mavs fan, music expert, occasional TL disruptor. We got Dre with us today. What's up, Dre?
What's happening, man? Glad to be here, man. Appreciate it.
If you guys are listening to us on Apple, Spotify, Tidal, make sure you give us 5 stars, give us 10 stars, whatever rating system they use. If you're listening to us on YouTube, make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe. The album that we'll be talking about today is Black on Both Sides by Mos Def. The Brooklyn emcee released the album on October 12th, 1999. Features with Busta Rhymes, Talib Kweli, Q-Tip, has production from DJ Premier. It was lauded by critics at the time. It's innovative, very Afrocentric. It was thought of to be what the pinnacle of what hip hop could be by some critics, in terms of what it was touching on subject matter wise and all the different instrumentation and things that it was using. So praised by a lot, praised by many, hated by very few. And very much it was only hated by, I think it was like, I saw like one review that was like negative. It was like, it was too long. I can't remember who gave that review. I can't remember what publication did that, but yeah, that's the album.
You know the race of the person?
Yeah, no, I don't have the race of the person. But
I'm just wondering, that's important.
But that's the album that we're going to cover today. And like I said, if you did not listen to the Lupe Fiasco Food and Liquor one we did, what we're going to do is we're going to just not too much rate the album or talk about how bad it was or how good it was. Well, yeah, we are going to talk about how good it was, but we're going to talk about the music in general, what we loved about it, our thoughts on it, and just the impact that it had on hip hop. So in a roundtable discussion leading us today, Daniel's going to take control of the questions. So Daniel, take away whenever you're ready.
Yep. So beautiful introduction, Brother Jordan. So for me, essentially, I don't know, this album, I don't even remember how I necessarily found this album. I want to say maybe I found out about Black Star first. Before I maybe found out about Mos Def, the solo artist. You know what? You're gonna laugh. Brown Sugar, top 3 movie ever made, and maybe that's my introduction to Mos Def.
I think my introduction was like Pandora Radio, and then Miss Fat Booty came on because like I like hip hop station, and then like it would periodically come on. I'm like, oh, who's this? Mos Def. Okay. Eventually, I thought myself, I'm gonna check out the rest of his music, and that's when I found out the album.
Hey man, Pandora loves Miss Fat Booty. Oh,
it do. That's the only Mos Def.
Pandora.
That's the only Mos Def song they play. It's just that one. So
I think my introduction to Mos, I think it was in my my 8th grade super listen to all the 90s rap type music. I think I was on Talib first, and then Black Star, and then Mos Def. The favorite quickly switched 100%. Wasn't even a question, man.
I used to love Talib Kweli too, and over time,
I no longer do. He on the internet abusing black women and bothering them.
And I've said this so many times, but it's so crazy to me as like it's rooted in hip hop Twitter. I never see that stuff until people say it, and then I go to his Twitter myself. Like I never seen him how to retweet it, quote it, or nothing. It just they like, man, he was wilding today. I said, I ain't see none of that shit. What are you doing?
I think their Twitter use is like the exact way I hear their music too, because Talib to me is just, you know how there's that fine line of like when you're just a little too preachy. I think Talib crosses that line to me, whereas Mos Def just so perfectly fits in there. It kind of sounds like you're experiencing those lessons with Mos rather than him just like talking at you over the entire song.
That's very well said.
Yeah.
Dre, what was your introduction to Black on Both Sides?
My introduction to this album, so my first time hearing Mos Def period was on College Dropout, which is one of my favorite albums of all time. And I didn't hear this album until I was in college. So this was probably like 2015. I was pretty late to this album. I'm almost kind of embarrassed to say it. But Cause I had a homeboy, I got a homeboy named Q. This is like his favorite album ever. So he was like, "You ain't never heard Black on Both Sides?" I was like, "Nigga, no, I'm from South Carolina. Ain't nobody ride around themselves like." But when I heard it, it was like immediately like, okay, I get it. Like I get the hype, I get his rapping ability. I didn't even know he sung like Umi says and all that. I didn't even know that. So that caught me off guard, but I loved it. And like now it's like top 20 favorite albums of all time. So I love this album, man.
And like I don't, and like people saying like you never heard Black on Both Sides? No, because it has like no real commercial songs other than Miss Fat Booty. Unless you heard it on Pandora, you probably never heard of it. Mos Def doesn't really do a lot of guest features. He don't do a lot of public appearances. Like you would it's easy to forget who he is or even that he existed unless you're like really, really, really into rap.
All right, you're cutting into my content. That is on the questions list.
My bad, Tommy. Go ahead. Tell us what was your introduction to this album?
I think the first time I listened to it, first time I heard Mos Def ever, I think this was back when I was on Spotify, listening to like recommended songs. And I think Black Star came on with Brown Skin Lady. And I added that song. And I thought that was such like a smooth, like a good vibe song. Wasn't paying attention to it much at the time. I just loved the vibe of it. But then I started looking more into Mos Def and everyone was saying, you got to listen to this album. You got to listen to this album. So I think I ended up listening to it about sophomore year in high school on like a plane going somewhere. And normally I fall asleep on planes, but I was so interested in what he was saying and the beats and the whole aesthetic of it all that I was just staying awake. I'm like, holy shit, this is really good. Where are his other albums? And I saw he only had like 2 other albums on like streaming. And then I was just kind of sad and disappointed.
So to me, I feel like this is, it's just a really black album. I don't know how more to like put that. So my first question was the album opens up with Fear Not of Man. And Mo says, you know what's going to happen with hip hop, whatever's happening with us. He goes on to explain, like, you know, if we smoked out, hip hop smoked out. If we all right, hip hop is going to be all right. So my question was, what transformations do you guys think hip hop has made since that statement was made? And do you believe that hip hop is currently a reflection of the state of Black people?
I'll go first. And I will say, maybe not so much the state of Black people, but I do think hip hop is definitely a reflection of mankind and just how we live in a digitalized age where we're constantly consuming media, like we're constantly like moving on to the next thing. And I feel like hip hop has become this product that's constantly trying to satisfy our hunger to consume things. And that's why you have artists releasing 20 track albums and then doing a deluxe edition with another 20 songs on it. Like they're constant, hip hop artists are constantly feeding us material because that's what all we want. Like it used to be that if you spent 2 years on an album, that wasn't a long time. But now if you spend 2 years on an album, it's like that's an eternity in the day and age of hip hop. So I feel like hip hop is really what artists are doing by speeding up the process, releasing like 4 or 5 projects in the same year, word to Griselda, or just releasing like ridiculously large albums. I think that reflects how our attention spans have changed. Also, how we've gone more harmonious and we do a lot more melodies. It's a lot less focused on just lyrics. Not to say that there aren't people now who make lyrics that matter, but there's a lot less emphasis on lyrics today compared to when Mos was rapping. And I think it's more so because now people don't really have time to sit down and really just like go to Rap Genius and look up every single last line of a song. Like I used to do that back in like high school and like middle school. I would like be on Rap Genius all day. I rarely do that for music now. Don't really have to for a lot of music, but I think that's like an accurate reflection of where we are today.
To follow up with that point, you know, when Mos Def said, you know, if we smoked out, hip hop's gonna be smoked out. And when you listen to a lot of mainstream rap today, you know, niggas is smoked out, niggas is perked out, zanned out, mollied out, all that. And that's not like to criticize or whatever how people live. It's a reality. And, you know, the music reflects that. So I always felt like that was one of those lines where even the first time I heard it, I was like, damn, that's true. And to take it even a step further, I feel like that applies to listeners as well. So like in 2015, I was in college, you know, going out, doing all of that. And, you know, I was bumping a lot of Future, a lot of Young Thug, Uzi and all that, because it reflected where I was in my life. Now, you know, years later, I'm washed, graduated, all that. So now I like Future, you know, I like this last album, but I don't really be bumping it like that. I'd rather listen to some like, Griselda or Bodie James or so I think that applies to the artist and the listener. Like hip hop just reflects on, where we at. So I think that was a super relevant line that he said in 1999, and 21 years later it's still relevant.
So he said a lot of stuff is still relevant today. What about you,
So for me, I kind of took it as where I see it is at the time that he said that, and definitely all before that, Black people, we were in, but usually it was in an aspect of taking, stealing, interpreting, and using. But now I kind of think that it's the reflection of how now Black people are in, that Black culture is in, and that's what people use and have commercialized. So I think that right now hip hop kind of emulates that, as rappers now not necessarily speaking on as much, these kind of topics, or trying to, the personas are now so much easier to emulate and appreciate and put in commercials and all that kind of stuff, that I think now Black people are just very in, Black music is very in, which we see statistically and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of how I see it, not necessarily as what's happening with Black people, but I guess what's happening with Black culture.
Word up. Tom, I'm sorry we keep going to you last.
So do I've actually
Black ass album.
Delon, actually going off what he said, I believe it's the song Rock and Roll on this album that kind of relates to what you said, that basically Mos Def spends the whole song just saying that rock and roll, which essentially derived a lot of its talent and creativity from the people who originated it, like Jimi Hendrix and all these other Black musicians, where the popular artists were at the time, white musicians. And he calls out like Limp Bizkit and a bunch of other white-led bands. That kind of shows that hip hop is essentially the driving force behind a lot of mainstream music nowadays. You see a lot of pop stars running, trap beats and having hip hop features all over the place. So that kind of reflects how that music and Black artists are able to pretty much influence the whole culture around them, besides just specifically hip hop. And I think that hip hop, because it's so big now, it's so diverse that it can cover different aspects and different point of views from different artists. So you still have the conscious edge of people, but you also still have the people that are ignorant and just like to go to the club and fuck shit up. So you have that broad spectrum, and I think it still reflects that.
I love hip hop because, like, I feel like more than any other genre. Well, more so than pop for sure, more so than country. I feel like it tells a story of like actual people every single day, more so than a lot of other genres do. But what you got for us?
Stories. I don't know what you're talking about.
What you got for us, Daniel?
Morgan Wallen is the soul.
Dan, we want to know. Come on, we ain't doing this. You ain't about to. Not Morgan Wallen. Not today.
Is a good genre. That's. But the next one, which I feel like we kind of discussed, so it was something we could pass over. But it was just I wanted to touch base on like what we thought was the central theme of the album, because of course I keep saying like I just think it's a Black ass album. I think blackness, or I think it's just like the story of a young Black man, and he talks about like different assets and aspects of what he believes to be blackness. And maybe in most mind, well, the album is Black on Both Sides. He know what he was doing. But maybe in most mind, he's just like telling his story, which happens to be a Black story. But yeah, I was gonna ask you guys, like, what do you feel is the central theme? Do you think it has a central theme? Do you think the tracks are unconnected? Do you think they connect?
I think just like what you said, the album's called Black on Both Sides. So you got one side is, he's preaching positivity, empowerment, community, things like that. Then you got the other side, you got the crime, you got the growing up in low income neighborhoods, you got the perception of Black people, like with Mr. Nigga, how we're viewed when we get success and things like that. So I feel like it does have a central theme. It's just, the celebration of just Black people in general, the good and the bad. So I feel like that's kind of the overarching theme of the whole album.
Big old facts. What about you, Tommy?
I agree with that pretty much, word for word, bar for bar, word to Soldier Boy. I will say that one of the most interesting things of it is while it does have that theme, it's kind of like imagine like a TV show where there's like an overarching theme, but each episode is kind of like its own individual story, but it still adds to the overall picture. Like it's weird to say, but a song like Hip Hop immediately followed after by a song like Love and then Miss Fat Booty, and they're all talking about these different subjects that when you look at them on the surface, they're so different, but they all add up to the same theme. So I honestly think that it's actually pretty clever how it works that way. There's the surface level side, and then there's the holistic side that you can look at it, which is like freedom of the mind and all of that.
And I think like Daniel, Dre, Tom, I pretty much already nailed it on the head, so I don't have too much more to add to this. But like you said, the album's called Black on Both Sides. I think the theme is more, he's focusing on like a celebration of being Black, enjoying the fact of that, and as well as talking about the experience of being a Black man, or even just being a person, because like themes like love, like you said, that's universal. That's something that anybody can relate to, and a couple of other topics along on the album. But ultimately, like it always ties back. Like I think on the song, was it Know That? And like there's like another song at the end of the song, it just breaks out into a chant. We just start my people, my people, my people. Like he does it like 2 or 3 times on 2 different songs. And so it's just like a reminder that like that's who he's talking to, that's who he's talking about as he progresses through the album. I think that's what the theme is. It's just blackness. Like yeah. Devon, you got anything to add on to that?
And for the smallest add-on, just self-love. Because even in the nuance of the way he talks about specific things, like Miss Fat Booty, for example, that is a very tender song talking about this woman with a fat ass. So I mean,
about love.
You know, it's a song about love, and not only that, there's so much appreciation for this woman that he is talking about. These positive affirmations, more so how much he wants her, but just like you know what I'm saying. It's just a very much appreciation of. And it's not really a confrontational album. Just a lot of lessons, a lot of caring, self-love in it.
But it gets confrontational on rock and roll, but other than that, yeah.
He has a line on mathematics that it kind of struck a chord with me, where it goes, for all my people, and he also mentions Latinos and even the gringos. So when I heard that, being a Latina, I'm like, oh, okay, all right,
me too.
Let's go.
I wanted to say, so when I listened to this album, though I know what led me to this album, I really don't know like how old I was or when that was when I discovered this album. I just know like it was there one day for me. I was gonna say, do you guys think, so this album kind of reminds me of, so 3 years prior, this dropped in 99. In 96, the Fugees dropped The Score, so I'm a young Haitian man or young Haitian American man. So to me, the Fugees are just like, I'm putting them over Wu-Tang, Outkast. It don't matter who it is. I see your eyes got wide, but I'm going to rep them. So I just always put the Fugees on like some pedestal. Because representation matters. And even when I talk shit, be like, man, you niggas always want to see somebody that look like you, but God damn it, I want to see somebody that look like me. So the Fugees gave me that. And I think that album, to me, The Score is just like about just beautiful blackness, about resistance, about community bonding, about resisting against oppression, resisting against supremacy. And I feel like Black on Both Sides exist in that kind of space as well. I was gonna ask, do you guys think albums like this still have a place in pop culture? I know the first one I think of is To Pimp a Butterfly, though Kendrick said, I was not trying to give you niggas anything, I was just talking about my life. And if it applies, it applies. But I was wondering, like, do we think that can still be a thing now?
Word up to what you said about the Fugees and how you gonna always rep them because of their Haitian background. That's how that's what we do about Big Crit every other episode for him being from Mississippi like us. Like, you ain't ever hear us say anything bad about Big Crit except his album. We did say some bad things about his last album, but we didn't say too many bad things. We kept it PG. Yeah, we kept it PG. We ain't put it on the Twitter like, hey y'all, we talking bad about Big Crit album. We didn't do none of that. We want nobody to hear us say that. But I honestly don't think there's a place in pop culture for this album, for an album like this. Like, even it wasn't a place for it back then. Fugees, well, maybe more so the Fugees, but it definitely wasn't a place for Mos Def album back then during the 90s. I don't even like To Pimp a Butterfly. Like, I look at what Damn is and how it's like it made Kendrick like monumentally bigger, than what he is now, and like how like My Left Stroke went viral, how I've seen that incorporated into like other people's songs, and how I've seen it like incorporated into TV shows, and just how I've seen like the damn cover be remade multiple times. Like a corny Clipper fan remade Kawhi Leonard. He remade the cover with Kawhi Leonard on the front of it because he got his hair look like Kendrick Lamar. I've seen so many things and takeaways in pop culture that includes damn. I even get on TikTok from time to time, and I'll see people use songs from Good Kid, Mad City on there. I don't see that with the Pimp a Butterfly. Like the music, like I don't see it like used on TikTok. I don't see it used like for funny. Well, I do see it used for funny videos because it's like the video of the girl twerking to you. But I do see that on Twitter. But like ultimately, like I don't really see it used in pop culture like that. I don't see people like celebrate or like pop culture like use the cover and like reimagine it in different ways, like I have with like Good Kid, Mad City or Damn. And I think it's because like pop culture don't really care about Black culture like that to really celebrate an album that's like really Black. So I think it's much appreciated. Like I love the hell out of Pimp a Butterfly. That's my favorite Kendrick album. But in the grand scheme of pop culture, I don't think there's a real place for it.
To that point, I think that's a lot more about the sound than it is the subject matter. Because even with one of the more approachable songs on the album, All Right, that has become an anthem of sorts, especially this summer.
I think.
Go ahead.
I hate to cut you off, sorry.
Go ahead.
But I think that's still celebrated in a very Black way. I'm making air quotes because what does that mean? But so I think we see All Right live to become like a protest song, but it's usually talking about like Black people like protesting and resisting against the system. So like I don't think I will go out and like.
But that's back to kind of like that point that I was making earlier. I do think that like because, and I hate to say it, but sticking up for Black people was a trend this summer. And I do think that became part of pop culture because when I was at the protest of the unnamed city that I live in now, a predominantly white protest that I saw, that song was blasting. They all knew all the words. And I do think that the subject matter of To Pimp a Butterfly was very much there. And I do think the subject matter of Here would be there as well. It's just that sound doesn't translate as well. But I do think that there is room for an album like Black on Both Sides in today's culture. It's just the difference is that you can just tell that integrity of the pro-Black music. And I personally don't want it if it is commercialized. And a lot of it is commercialized. Like as soon as we see one of those on a like a Macy's commercial or something like that, or we see like the song that was made for the commercial with the Pepsi can and all that kind of stuff. Or you just hear the song that is, we're black, but like there's no real depth to it besides just getting that chanting or something like that. No love for This Is America. I like, yeah. So yeah, I like my pro-Black music with some integrity, with some thoughts. When I see that, I do love it now.
Even then, like you said, you notice the sound. I'm trying to think of some more like real pro-Black or just like very pro-Black songs before even like Bias Matter came out. But like I get J. Cole usually makes music like that from time to time too. But I don't think none of those songs are his more popular ones either. You see what I'm saying? So I don't even think it's just this. Maybe those songs happen to have that sound too, like To Pimp a Butterfly. But I don't even think songs that generally celebrate being Black generally reach the stratosphere of like commercialism.
I think it depends on. So I wanted to talk to Delon. Mentioned the idea of commercial, and that's a word that I kind of loathe. There's not an attack on you, Delon. But I just feel like for some reason, whenever artists we enjoy become successful, fans like start to complain and bicker, and like it's just a weird thing. And I'm laughing because Hove is Dre's background, and Hove is who I hear in my mind like talking about this. Like, am I not supposed to make money? Like, this is my profession. Like, what? Mm-hmm. So I think of. So granted, I don't really care for the song, but Beyonce's Formation to me was supposed to be like a pro-Black song, and it was a very, very successful song. I went back to talk about, I'll backpedal and talk about the Fugees again. The Score is a very successful album. I'd say it's maybe like 4 times platinum or something like that. Has like massive songs on it, and the whole album is about like being Black. So I think there's a space for it, but I think what Delon goes back to saying like about integrity. So I remember when Meek was released from jail this last time, And there was like this whole campaign. Yeah, you know where I'm going, Jordan. And I was like, I hope people don't try to turn him into Meek Luther King, because that's not what he is. Like, that's not what I want to hear from you. But so he really did try to go that way, and you can tell when it's just not genuine and something is fake and someone's doing something because it's just like what's in right now. And I think that's why that music was very unsuccessful, and I think that's why people still don't really listen. Like, he just had an EP that I'm sure none of you guys heard, because people just don't care. And when you can see that lack of integrity and lack of actual care for something, it translates. So I agree with DeLon that it has to be someone who like shows integrity. I want to say Rhapsody tried, but you know how I feel about Rhapsody. But I believe it was genuine in that album. I actually like that album. It wasn't too bad.
For me, a quick summary. For me, it's all about what did you make this song for? Where did your purpose of this song come from? And a lot of times, actually, you can kind of see that. You can poke holes in the integrity of it.
Oh, just go a little bit off subject. Daniel told me Meek Mill released a project, and I just had zero clue. I had zero clue. I usually have. Go. Yeah, I'm saying I usually hear about things. I just get around to it eventually. I had zero clue. Didn't know when it dropped. Hadn't heard nobody tweet about it. Hadn't seen a word. That's it's scary. But Dre, Tommy, I have anything else to add on to this topic? Yeah, you're right. You're right. It's getting scary out here for me. Y'all guys have anything else? You guys have anything else to add to this?
I think I pretty much can piggyback off of DeLon's point where I kind of question whether, there is a space for it, because, pop culture, they don't want to celebrate, blackness and being proud in your blackness or whatever, outside of a couple of, like you mentioned Beyonce, but Beyonce like is already a star. So it's like, that was her debut song. It probably wouldn't really do anything. And on to the Kendrick point, Spin Butterfly, that's his least popular album. So it's like, that ain't no coincidence. It's his most critically acclaimed album, but didn't sell as much as Good Kid or Damn. So I don't know. I mean, I think just pop culture is more so just thinking about pushing the artists that, have that accessible sound, that accessible content. And I feel like it's been like that for quite some time, honestly. So I think there's a space like under the commercial, commercial aspect of hip hop. But as far as like an album like this being the biggest album of the year, yeah, that's probably not going to happen.
All right. Tommy, you don't have anything else to add? Daniel, what you got for us?
Oh, Tommy, you didn't have anything?
No, not really. Honestly, I agree with everything you guys said.
we gotta let Tommy go first next time, man.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm about to do. So, Daniel, what you got for us?
Before I go into the next one, deviate one more time. As you guys were talking, it made me think. I don't know if anybody listens to Nina Simone or like watched the doc, but on Netflix a while ago there was a doc called "What Happened, Nina Simone," and it was just made by her close family members and friends about her life and her music and things of that. And it just always made me think. At a point in her career, she made the conscious decision to make like really black political protest music. And in the moment, it made me think about when DeLon was like, what's popular in the moment. So in the moment, it hit. But then when people had moved on, all the like activists had died, everyone was like over it. Her career took a massive hit because so much of her catalog was that. And then no one, I guess, wanted to hear that anymore. White audiences, black audiences, anyone. So I think also while I'm saying I want artists to like be beautifully black in their approach and things like that. I think we also have to make sure we're like supporting these artists with our like buying power, because we're asking them to sacrifice a lot by doing this, and then they end up like just no one's booking them, blah blah blah. But throw that away. I just wanted to get that off. So on Umi Says, this is why I told Jordan shut up. But on Umi Says, Mo says, sometimes I don't want to be bothered. Sometimes I just want a quiet life with me and my baby, me and my lady. So Mos is like a pretty elusive act. I would say he doesn't pop up often. I don't even know if he goes by Mos or if it's Yasin Bey right now. We know he left the country for a bit. He doesn't do guest verses. He doesn't, unless you're the Brooklyn Museum, you can't listen to his album. So I know when we talk about the idea of like a top 10 MC, it's a lot more than just like your catalog and your rhyming ability. Like it's a lot of other things into that. My question was, can Mos still be considered impactful or like a top 10 act without being out and about?
Take it away, Tommy.
Okay, so actually, in prep for this, I did listen to his other albums to get a bit of perspective on his career. Granted, The Ecstatic is literally one of the most elusive albums to find to listen. I was able to still listen. In terms of, I still think, and he's in my top 10, but he's the one person in my top 10 that I will be honest that his catalog is kind of like Lupe's, where there's some incredible highs, but there's some albums that I just really don't enjoy. But I think what excels him above other MCs is honestly his songwriting ability, because even on this album, he shows like not just the ability that he has really good wordplay, really good like breath control, cadence, all this other stuff, but he's so good at making just a good vibe and a catchy song. I think the hook from Habitat has been stuck in my brain for the past 3 weeks and I can't get it out of my head. And I honestly think has like that one of a kind voice and ability to do that. So even though he's elusive nowadays, he's still dropping great verses. What was that song on Bandana that he had a verse on? Education. That was a phenomenal verse. Also, I think it was Kids See Ghosts that he had a really interesting feature. Like he's able to go experimental, and I think that puts him over a lot of other MCs too. So I think he's in my top 10, but I could understand because of the discrepancies in his albums that he wouldn't be in someone else's. But he's very talented.
I would love to put Mos Def. Well, like to say, if we had to make a hard cut, like I think this should be what everybody's top 10 is. Like, which you can't say that because music's subjective and all that stuff. I'll be like, I'm gonna say it. I'm like, these are the top 10 artists in hip hop, and y'all should agree with it. I don't know if I could put Mos Def there because I do really love his his first album, and The Ecstatic is also an amazing album and all that stuff. If you want to include things like impact and how he influenced hip hop and the rest of the things, I don't know how many people like today, those rappers who've been making music, who start making music in like this past decade, how many of them like even know Mos Def or even familiar with his music? Because like I said, his music is so elusive. Like people don't really play it. It's not really commercialized, so you're not going to hear it just randomly in like a Spotify or Apple playlist like that. He's very, very, very anti, capitalism, commercialism. So like, if you want to hear Mos Def, you got to go find Mos Def, and I don't feel like a lot of people do. Like, there's definitely some artists still remaining today who probably draw inspiration from him, like Joey Badass has mentioned Mos Def before in his music, and I'm pretty sure there's some more NY artists I'm missing off the top of my head that also pay homage. But I don't think his impact is anywhere near top 10. Like I think there's far more artists who have touched other artists the next generation, and those guys are pulling from them. I don't think many people might pull from Mos Def, even though I would love if they did, because he's a phenomenal artist. Dre, what do you think about that?
If somebody walked up to me and said, yo, Mos Def is top 10 all time, I wouldn't even look at you crazy. I wouldn't even debate it, because when you think about it, like, yeah, his catalog isn't the most extensive, but he got 2 classics on his resume. He got Black Star and Black on Both Sides. That's more than 98% of rappers who've ever picked up a microphone. So it's like, and you want to talk skill, you want to talk talent, you want to talk just ability to rap and make a song. I mean, there ain't too many people you putting over Mos Def. As far as the impact thing, I think I may save that for the questions that, I ask, but I feel like Mos Def's impact might be a little underrated. Cause like when you really think about it, like, all right, I'm already on the tangent, so I'm gonna go ahead and go to the point. So when you think of dual threats in hip hop, most of the time you think of Lauryn Hill, shout out to Daniel, and you think of Andre 3000. That's kind of like the first 2 names you think about because they're superstars. They got Grammys, platinum albums, yada yada. I feel like Mos Def deserves a little more consideration in those conversations because, I mean, he was playing with different genres on his album. He was able to sing effectively. Umi Says, great song. You know, Climb, great R&B song. Rock and Roll, you know, the whole rock portion at the end of the song. I mean, I feel like he may deserve a little more credit, especially when you hear like Kanye, and obviously Mos Def was on his first album. Like when you listen to Kanye, you can maybe hear a little bit of Mos Def. I could be reaching.
I say the subject matter. I say the subject matter for sure.
Yeah, but I feel like Mos Def might deserve a little more consideration. So if somebody say he's top 10, I wouldn't be mad at it. For me, he's probably top 15, top 20 in my personal list, but I think he has a case for top 10 all the time.
Dan, you seem like you was about to say something. What were you about to?
As far as I love Kanye, this is not a slight to Kanye in any way. But if Kanye sounded like Mos, it's probably because Mos wrote it.
Come on, man.
Mos was around.
He was in the studio. He was there.
He was there.
Nah. Kanye wrote Sierra Leone. Dylan, what you about to say?
I wasn't going to say much. I was also going to add on to Dre. Underrated actor, Mos Def is. Underrated actor.
Brown Sugar top 5 ever.
Yeah, I don't really have. I personally don't. My 8 through 15 is very subjective, or not very subjective. It changes a lot. I don't really consider it that often. So top 10. But I just think, unfortunately for Mos Def, the way he likes to live his life with acts from the 90s, they're just really not, in terms of impact, really not brought up a lot. If like they don't have that visibility nowadays, and unfortunately that's a fine line where a lot of older acts are kind of mad corny now. We see LL Cool J on Twitter specifically always saying something weird, just always something.
No love for Big Ellie.
Big Ellie, man.
Man, not on Twitter.
Big Ellie don't deserve that.
Man, we don't deserve it. But you know, just not even like a constantly making music kind of visibility, but just like there. I mean, even Andre like pops up on a train station with his flute sometimes. But I don't know. It's just a lot of the tastemakers don't really bring up Mos Def. So unfortunately, his impact is going to be a little bit clouded as time goes on.
As you know, that's what we're here for, man. That's why we do this kind of stuff, so that people can think about those kind of artists. Because listening to the album, it's a shame how much he switches back and forth, rapping, singing, rock, R&B, rap, and yet when people talk about most diverse artist who was a triple threat, his name doesn't even come up. Nobody even thinks about it. You go to the comment section and like people say, you forgot this person. People don't even mention Mos Def in the comments. So like he's like an afterthought when we have those discussions, and that's just a shame.
A lot of people like they on those kind of discussions, they like to be really like quick to name those artists as like the super binary music. Like when Drake does the 5 singing and the 5 rapping. When Lauren does the I am very much rapping here, I'm very much singing here. Even my favorite Drake project is the project where he's rapping and singing on most of the songs, switching up like very frequently, like most would do, not necessarily like splitting it up like that. And I think because Mos does that, it covers up a lot of it. Then it covers up a lot of that singing that people just don't listen to, appreciate, or remember.
What do you guys think about the? I forget who said it, but in terms of versatility, I noticed, and this may not be strictly him, and might be more the producer side of things, but there are a couple songs on this album that have really intense beat switches. Honestly, I can't think off the top of my head of any 90s albums, hip hop albums that have intense beat switches to the extent of this album. I mean, Brooklyn's kind of like a high-minded sicko mode, because there's literally like 3 different beats, and it's all just him just spitting facts about like where he grew up in. Rock and Roll has like a punk breakdown at the end of it, which is like super out of place, but it's fire at the same time. Do you think maybe he had influence on the idea of having beat switches to sound really cool or change the structure of a song in the future? Or do you think that might just purely be up to chance?
Might be up to chance, but that's a very good point, because sitting here thinking like my favorite songs from the 90s, I can't really think of any off the top of my head that had a beat switch in it. Like
A Million and One Questions by Jay-Z. They got the beat switch and it goes into Rhyme No More.
Mhm.
That was 97, I think. That's probably the only one I could think of, a song that got a legit beat switch, like a whole different beat to it. But it's still rapping. Like you mentioned rock and roll, that's, you know, it goes into a whole nother genre for the last like minute and 30 seconds. So I can't think of nothing like that where it's that drastic of a switch. So yeah, that might be a good point.
That's a very great
my
point.
research. I don't want to just like make a comment,
Yeah.
but that's off top. I can't. That's
That's not something you want to go on record saying like, yeah, he definitely was the first one to do it, and you know, people in the comment section be like, these niggas don't know nothing.
What about Harris 1 in 1980?
But you gave me some food for thought though, Tom. I'm gonna make sure we look into that after this though, because I'm intrigued now.
Get off. It's someone. Well, a few people I know Delon mentioned and Jordan mentioned the idea of Mos being like elusive. Tommy, you said like how you had to go dig for his music, things like that. So Mos did something pretty cool till end of last year, beginning of this year that was like near and dear to my heart. I wanted to get to New York so badly to experience it, but it just didn't happen for me. So Mos, in conjunction with the Brooklyn Museum, he released an album or an EP. And if you did not get to the Brooklyn Museum, you did not hear the project. Many sleepless nights. I was like, damn it, I gotta get to New York. But so it was, he premiered it exclusively. It was 8 tracks, 28 minutes long. So it was kind of like almost like an installation of a sort. So you come to the museum, they take all your devices, make sure you're not recording it. You go into space. I'm unsure how they curated it specifically. And then you just like really listened and took in the album. And I thought it was, to me, I was like mind blown as a person who loves museums and who loves hip hop. I always think about like, I always tell my directors like, I just want to blacken up museums. And I was like, damn, look at Mos doing the work. He blackening up museums. And I thought it was beautiful. And then him being from Brooklyn and then the Brooklyn Museum just being one of the very few museums that I think just always gets it right every time on how to like reach across that out to that audience. I thought it was perfect because I was like, you know, Mos is probably bringing in a group or an audience into the museum who probably has never been, who probably had some really bad experiences, whose parents might have had bad experiences, and then it turned them off. And I was like, you know, Mos is opening up that door again. I was going to say, do you guys think there is a place in museums for this? Is there a place in hip hop for this? And if so, like which acts or like which albums would you like to experience in a museum? I'm looking at Dre's background, and Blueprint in a museum would be crazy to me.
Jay-Z in museums. I think for Magna Carta, Holy Grail, I think he tried to do like an art performance of, I think he was like freestyling for like 4 hours or something in a museum with water breaks, I think. So it might not have been 4 hours, but Jay-Z does rap a lot about, you know, paintings, and that's not necessarily appreciating them and more just owning them because he is that wealthy. But I do think that there are a lot of albums that not just musically and historically, but also aesthetically should be on display for museums, because at the end of the day, it is art. And I think Black on Both Sides is like kind of a perfect example of that, because all like the music videos, the way it sounds, the way that its characters are presented is kind of an amazing work of a body of work of just one person putting their heart and soul onto pen and paper and over beats. So I definitely think that there's room in museums for stuff like this.
Word to Mos Def earlier in the album when he says, you know, hip hop isn't a giant waiting in the hills. You know, it's a reflection of us and who we are. And I feel like that's what museums are supposed to do. It's supposed to capture the times of what we are now, you know, what we were then. And I definitely feel like there's a place for music for music, you know, in general. I feel like music should be in more museums. And with that being said, I know hip hop should be placed in museums so that, you know, like I said, I feel like it captures the grand scheme of like the Black experience. If you listen to the right songs from year to year to year to year to year, I feel like it tells our story. God, that was another point I was going to make. Delon, take it away until I come back to me. I'm trying to remember what it was.
I very much that type of stuff, and I hadn't heard the Mos Def thing in the museum, but that's like the type of stuff that makes me love music so much more. I really love when music presents itself in other mediums. For example, or even like breakdowns of specific things like Jay-Z's Decoded or Kanye West's Kanye West, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, the visual album that comes with it. I watched that like a mean 3 times. Like I just love when music comes in other presentations like that. So definitely, now Daniel, you're the museum expert, so I can't speak on it as much as you. Definitely would love to see that a lot more. I don't know how it works, but you know, I'm also a little wary of hip hop museums as a whole, because like T.I. being in charge of the museums kind of threw me off, and I don't really, I don't know. It's kind of like this it's this mixed bag for me when I need it to be somebody from Black culture to be in charge of these museums, but I really don't want a specific artist in charge of these museums because T.I. had a little too much power there, just determining who's trap and you know the history of trap but yeah, more museums like that. I don't know where I'd like them placed, but yeah.
I've never been to the Trap Museum. I've heard it was a cool experience. Some people I know went and they were telling me about it, but I just don't think I cared enough. And then I don't know, he did that he split like a throne and it was like Nicki on one half and Cardi on one half. And I was like, yeah, this is not the place for me. And then I was just done with it from there. I like the idea. Somebody was saying something?
Oh, I'm about to say, I finally remember what I was going to say earlier. If we did did top 10 lyricists all time, across all genres, Shakespeare would be a top 10 rapper. Like lyricists, like lyrics, like there's a lot of people I feel like there's a lot of people who are better writers. Like there's a lot of hip hop. Yeah, ghostwriters. I didn't know that. I mean, it makes a lot of sense though. But I'm gonna say this: there are a lot of really, really talented writers within hip hop. I think Lupe is one of the greatest writers. Not just within hip hop, like just period. Like he's very, very good at what he does in terms of like putting together stories and telling things with his music. And I feel like hip hop is an underappreciated form of literature that it just goes untapped. And I feel like that it should be displayed more so like that, like how Kendrick's Pimp Butterfly, where was it put? Pimp Butterfly and Damn were put in 2 different places. One got a Pulitzer, and then another one got something else. I can't remember what it was.
The Harvard Music Library or something like that.
Yeah. Pimp Butterfly's in Harvard. Damn was given a Pulitzer. And I feel like more mediums like rap should be given like that. Like Damn should not have been we talked about this before. Damn should not have been the first rap album to get a Pulitzer. There are a lot of albums or even the lyricism and the writing that goes into those albums are just as good, if not damn near way better than Damn. And I just feel like music in general hip hop definitely should be recognized more so for its writing and be, internalized in museums in that way.
I think sometimes hip hop has to be, I don't like the term easily consumable because I don't necessarily want my music to be easily consumable. Like I want my music to kind of challenge me in certain ways. But I think hip hop is one of those genres. I'm trying to think hard before I say what I want to say. I know what I want to say, but I'm trying to like map it out. So I think people look at Black people as like inherently like aggressive or rough or tough or like those, and I think hip hop attaches like however people view Black people view hip hop as well. So I think people always look for that one song that's kind of, this is kind of cool. We can listen to this too. We can say this too. We can enjoy this too. So I think I think Pac's Dear Mama is in like the Library of Congress, the Congress's music library, the Library of Music for Congress, something like that. But to me, I wouldn't say that's like the Pac song that I would put there. If there was one Pac song, I know it wouldn't be that. I don't even know if I would put that like in my top 5 Pac songs, but it's easily consumable. It's something everyone can relate to. You don't have to be Black to enjoy this. You don't have to be impoverished to love this. Everyone loves their mother. So I think hip hop is like one of those things as well, where we'll see. So more to Dre's point, where he was like, everyone agrees, not everyone, because I know a lot of people who don't, but maybe the vast majority of people agree to Pimp a Butterfly is Kendrick's like best work, and he took it to heights he never took it. But it's not as easily consumable. Everybody cannot relate to this. Everyone doesn't go through these struggles or everyone isn't Black. So, and everyone isn't a Black kid from Compton. And to me, that's very much what that album is. So I think that album, hip hop in general, songs, albums, whatever, if you're not easily consumable in a way, then you just aren't going to get that love or that recognition. And
I think it's the sound as well. Because, when Damn got that Pulitzer Prize, I didn't agree with it. I thought Spin Butterfly should have got it. But Damn has a more accessible sound, with Humble and DNA. It's more trap influence, sounds and things like. Obviously, yeah, he still got Alchemist and Ninth Wonder on there, but the songs that you hear, it's more accessible. It's more, and he's still telling his story. And even with Good Kid, Mad City, with Swimming Pools, that's a accessible song. It's an anti-alcohol song, but it's a catchy hook. The beat is reminiscent of what the sounds were in 2012. So Spin a Butterfly there was nothing that sounded like Spin a Butterfly, especially not in the mainstream. There was nothing. So I think it's obviously the content as well, but it's also the sound. Like, it's just not a super popular sound of that time. So I think it's both of those reasons.
So yeah, I think everybody here agrees that hip hop should definitely be put. It should be it should be put in museums. But museums tend to like go way, way, way back, and then hip hop still is a fairly young genre. So I can kind of get why some museums probably wouldn't include it, because some museums might not even reach the 1900s. They might just be dabbling more, before that. But like I said, you would know more about that than I would, Daniel. But I feel like if there's any museums with things from the 2000s or anything from the late 90s, 80s, since hip hop is being accepted, I feel like there's a place for it in those museums.
I feel like, and to counter with that point, I feel like Jay-Z was named to the Songwriters Hall of Fame.
I think it's the first rapper, right?
The first rapper, but yeah, this was a couple years ago. It's like, now obviously that's my GOAT, my favorite rapper of all time. There should be more rappers in the Songwriters Hall of Fame. There should be more. So yeah.
I want to say, stop saying more, Daniel, and as far as museums for everybody. It's not. So stop saying that. But I think museums are just like everywhere else. When I think when Delon was talking about the whole it was like Catcher, the it thing, to be like protesting or care about Black lives this summer. I think museums do the same thing. I've definitely gotten in trouble professionally for saying this aloud, but I definitely think museums have been on this weird bandwagon of let's make accessible and everyone's in and we're inclusive. I hate those words now, accessibility and inclusive, because no one can really explain to me what it means. What are we talking about? So I think everyone would be let's fake. Yeah, we're camaraderie, but I think it's all BS. But I think there's a place for everywhere. So yeah, I think you're right in certain spaces where there are museums of pop culture, there are museums of music and things of that. So I think if it applies, hip hop should be able to be in it. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. But once again, about accessibility, I work at a civil rights museum, but was just told that we can't talk about Malcolm X. Makes no sense to me. He literally embodies everything that we talk about, but I was told just no, flat out, we can't. But I was what are you saying? And it was Daniel, no.
That's what white people, Daniel. Come on now, it's a two-sided coin.
No, that's really what it was. That's really what it was. They're they're not going to approve this. No, they're not going to approve this. But whatever. So my last question. It was really two questions, but I feel like I might as well put them into one. And then we're gonna eventually talk about New World Water. I couldn't think of how I wanted to talk about it, but to me it's too I don't know, that song is just heavy and loaded and it makes me think about so much. It makes me think about Flint, it makes me think about Malcolm X, it makes me think about Ghana. There's so many layers, but I couldn't figure out how to get that. But I just want to drop that so everybody know we're gonna get back to New World Water. But my final question was, I want to know everyone's just personal top 3 from the album, maybe their favorite bar. My top 3 would be Do It Now, Umi Says, and New World Water, which I think are just all back-to-back. That's a crazy 3-run stretch. I can't think of many better, 3-run stretches on the album. And then my favorite bar had to be from New World Water, where he says, way up north and down south is drinking it. Used to have minerals and zinc in it. Now they said it got lead and stink in it. And once again, it just made me think about a lot that is currently happening, a lot that has happened before. And it was just, I was God damn, Mos. But yeah, go ahead.
I think my favorite songs are Love, New World Water, and then what's the name of the other song? Rock and Roll. Terms of favorite things in those songs, things he says. I don't know what it is, but the hook on love, I absolutely love. Like the love that part, but also I start to write. And, wait, I start to think.
I start to think, and then
Yeah,
I
sink into the paper. Like I was ink. I don't know that visual in my head. Like it just I don't know. I love it absolutely.
You know where that's from, right?
I don't actually.
That's a Rakim bar.
Word.
Mm-hmm.
Shout
he turned that
Rakim.
into a hook. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The God MC that no one that spoke to me. But and then like rock and roll, I absolutely love him. Like denouncing, like, yeah, that's not really rock and roll. This guy's rock and roll, and like that guy right there, nah, he ain't rock and roll. But this guy's rock and roll. Like I really love that whole dynamic. Him just sitting there, just saying, like, just want to clear the, just clear the air. Like, hey, no, these guys are the real rock and rollers. Like those are the guys who really made this genre. They're the ones who made it. So I absolutely just love the energy, the idea behind that song. And then New World Water, like Daniel said, it touches on so much that's so relevant today. From Flint to, he talked about how California being on fire in the 90s and needing water, and they don't really have it. And like somebody I'm friends with on Twitter hit me up yesterday. He said California is on fire again now, and it's crazy. Yeah, so those are my favorites.
I'd say for my favorites, I freaking love Habitat. I've come to honestly love that song, and I can't even put my finger on it because like he's obviously talking about, like home is where you make it, and we all have our different habitats and where we thrive in and survive in. I just think it's a really interesting concept, but I think it's honestly one of my favorite songwriting moments in hip hop just ever, based on like the catchiness and the rhythm of it. Beyond that, Miss Fat Booty, it's a classic. I don't care if that's a basic pick. I freaking love that song. I think I tweeted it at like 11:30 at night playing dominoes with my family. That's like top 5 hip hop instrumentals ever. And 2 minutes later, I saw that Daniel liked it, and I'm like, hey, there we go. And then I think just for the last one, New World Water. Again, I think when I listen to that song now, it kind of blows my mind. That's one of the few songs that's like truly like speaking. It could release today and still basically be treated as the same thing. Like that's how well it's aged.
Incredible.
And I guess for a favorite bar, on Habitat, it's while these cats that's less privileged is just more raw, less space because the project's laced with more flaws, less sleep because the nights ain't peace, it's more war. The can is raw like thirsty rainy season thunderclaps. On the block with your old pop pleading number act to the spot with the red top fiends is huddled at. Just talking about the neighborhood that he grew up in and how tough it was to be there and how many flaws there were and how things need changing. But at the end of the day, that's where he lived, so he had to make the best of it. I think there's just so many layers to that.
Word up. What about you, Dre?
Top 3, I'll probably go Brooklyn. I love, the beat switches. I love the way he's rapping on that. The last part, Who Shot Ya? Some of the best rapping I've ever heard in my life. Like his flow was insane on that one. Got was another great song that I love. Just talking about, people, flexing with the jewelry or whatever, and making yourself an easy target and all that. And that's real. And I'd probably go Love. For many of the same reasons Jordan said, like the hook, everything just hits perfectly. That was one of the first songs that really clicked for me. Like when my first listen, it was like, yeah, that's the one. Everything else kind of grew on me, more, but that one was immediately like, yeah, that's the one. My favorite bar or bars is probably on Hip Hop when he said, the industry is just a better built cell block a long way from the shell tops and the bells that L rock. And I look at that and, you think about the industry now where labels are trapping young artists into lucrative multi-album deals and not giving the publishing and things like that. So it's basically like you're imprisoning these artists for a certain amount of time. Like you gotta drop this many projects, and now they're doing a thing where you drop a project but they list it as a mixtape, so it don't even count as an album on your deal. So now it's just like it's pretty much a better built cell block. It's like, yeah, they give you an advance, make you think you're doing something, but 10 years from now, when your album is 5 times platinum and you got $5,000 from it, it's like it don't really even up. So I think that was real interesting. That was, like I said, 21 years ago, and artists are still going through. You know, we had a situation with Meg earlier this year. So, you know, it's just another super relevant thing of the album. So I'd probably say that's my favorite bars of the album.
Mine, I have a top two. My top two is Do It Now, Busta Rhymes, one of my favorite 90s acts. And I'm a sucker for a back and forth. And then Brooklyn. And I don't have a favorite bar, but my favorite verse is the second and third verse on Brooklyn. Y'all know that gif of Michelle Obama where she's like, from like a technical aspect, that Brooklyn, I'm like, the whole time, man. That man, it felt like, I don't want to explain it, but it was just great. It was great.
He was put on a clinic on that verse. Both those verses.
All right. So Daniel said he doesn't have any more questions. Did anybody else have any other questions that they brought for themselves or y'all maybe thought of while we were sitting here? I don't have any.
I got one question. So you mentioned Twitter earlier, and obviously Talib is doing bad shit. Just we'll leave it at that. Just bad stuff. But there's been rumors going around for a while. I think I heard it like 2 years ago that Mos Def and Kweli were both interested in linking up and potentially doing a second Black Star. Would you see that as something that would have a space in today? Would you be interested in listening to it, or do you think you'd be fine without a second one?
I personally don't want it. I'm not a person who always cares for sequels personally, especially when it's been that long of a time in between. Like I wouldn't even want to watch Throne 2, and that's like 10 years ago. So like I don't need it. I probably would still check it out, but like I know Jeezy just dropped the Recession 2 and I didn't listen to it. I barely liked the first Recession. So it's like I don't need like always a follow up. Like it's okay to let things be and let me enjoy them in that bubble. So for me, no, I don't need it. I
think I actually saw that it's done. Like I think that was like it came out like this year. Like it's done. We just holding on to it. I don't know. Mos Def like saw what Cap. You know, maybe he logged on Twitter one day and said, "Let me see what my boy Kweli be doing on Twitter." And he said, "You know what? Maybe I shouldn't drop this album right now. We'll try again in 2021 or 2022 or whenever." But it's done. Do I want it? I'm definitely gonna listen to it because I gotta hear most verses, and I ain't gonna front. I like Kweli's rapping from time to time still. So I definitely check it just to hear it.
Yeah. I'm afraid of this content. I would love to listen to it. I'm going to listen to it if it does drop. And I think my point is that's probably the only way we're going to hear Mos Def ever again on an album, like for a full album.
That's what I'm saying. You got to bite the bullet.
Am I waiting for it? No.
Yeah, I think they was talking a couple years ago about making a Black Star 2, and you know, I'm with Daniel. Sequels scare me. You know, you see, I got Blueprint 1 and not the Blueprint 2 as my background, so that's a clear sign. Like sequel, I haven't listened to Recession 2 yet either, and Recession is by far my favorite Jeezy album. I can't do it. So when it first dropped the news, I was like, okay, that should be interesting. Then they said Madlib produced it all, and I was like, come on now, like a Black Star album produced by Madlib, that sounds like a YouTube comment under a Big L video. Like that's just like that's something. Like, come on now, like, you really expect us to believe that actually exists? Like, come on. So I'll listen to it. You know, I definitely want to hear Mos rap some more. Like, you know, his verse on Education last year was amazing. So I know he still got it. So if I can get a whole nother album of Mos Def verses or singing, whatever the hell he's doing these days, I mean, I'll listen to a whole album of it. But do I think we're going to get it? Probably not. I think that's just going to be one of those what if things in hip hop. And like, I would have believed it. If they didn't say Madlib produced it, I would have believed it. I would have believed it existed. I would have believed it's somewhere on a CD. But when they say Mad Lib, I'm like, nah. Mm-mm. So I'll listen to it if it drops, but I have no hope.
Yeah. I'm gonna tell you what. Side note, this is off topic, but when Jeezy announced Recession 2, I was like, man, that's stupid. Like he released the last he released the last recession. We was in a recession. We ain't in a recession no more. And then I Googled it. I'm like, oh damn, we are in a recession. I didn't even know. I didn't even know. Oh shit. Well, oh man. Anybody else got a question?
Not a question, but not one. I will say I usually hate sequels, but Busta Rhymes Extinction Level Event 2 was a very good sequel. Other than that, I usually hate sequels as well.
Mm-hmm. So I guess in my point earlier when I talk about dual threats in hip hop, and obviously people bring up Lauren and Andre. Do y'all feel like Mos Def should get more credit in regards to being a dual threat in hip hop?
I think it depends on maybe the way you're talking about dual threats. So I think Mos Def does get brought up. So when I hear about like rappers who also act, I hear people say like Mos Def, Queen Latifah, Will Smith. Like I hear him in that range. But as far as like musically, and I get what we're saying on how like diverse this album is, and like Umi says he's singing. But for me, and it's gonna sound crazy because I love Mos Def, I love this album. I won't call Mos a good singer. I think the song is good. So I think it worked. But no, I'm not calling Mos a dual threat because of how he sang on Umi Says, because naturally I don't want to hear anybody singing like that. It just worked for that song. So no, I won't be calling Mos a dual threat in that sense. But if we talk about rappers who I believe can like make music but then also act or do it in like different art forms, I'll throw Mos in that space. And I think that is a space that people do respect him in.
I'll say this, but a lot of times that when people talk about rappers who can do both, they don't generally think like, I get why you said that, Dan, but a lot of times they don't think in terms of like he can actually sing and he can't. So I'm going to exclude him because he can't sing. So with that being said, I think he should, in those conversations, I do think he deserves more credit for rappers who are capable of, doing hooks, also like doing an entire song of singing, even if it's not, and maybe not the best singing, but it's the fact that he's able to execute it and still make a good song. And I think that's the most important thing, because you don't have to be a really good singer to make a good song. I've learned that in recent years. Or even like, that's even like a, what was it? I think I had an argument with one of my other co-hosts, Cord, about this. We were talking about, what was it? Was it not jazz? Was it like rock and roll? Like there's a lot of rock and roll singers who could not actually sing, but like they made incredible music. So I don't want to discount him in that regard. But if, like I said, if people have conversations about dual threats and being able to do both and make good songs while doing both, he definitely should be mentioned more. But like in terms of like, a lot of times people talk about it, they're talking about it in terms of, hey, this person influenced Drake to be a dual threat because that's who his music sounds like. They'll say like Kanye and Kid Cudi influenced them. I don't know how many rappers start rapping today and try to sing and rap, and they did it because they heard Mos Def doing it. So and I think that's why a lot of times he gets excluded from that conversation.
Yeah, I was trying to think of I heard you speaking, and immediately I was thinking of my retort. But
that's what Daniel do. And it'd be a fun little counter, Jordan. If every episode we did like the Daniel was on, we did like a counter of how many times you start off with, I heard what DeLon was saying, but DeLon said that shit earlier. But we do like a counter in the corner of the screen.
We should just do a drinking game. Just take a shot. Take a shot every. The next episode, take a shot every time he does it. Oh man, we'd be drinking champs by the end of it.
Yeah, Mos is talented, but yeah, I just don't know. I just don't think Mos is a dual threat in that way, or at least not to what I think a dual threat means in my mind. So I guess that, like I said, yeah. So
I can consider the divide here is good at it and can make it work, and it's just that divide, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think he makes
semantics.
It work, but I don't know if that's
semantics.
He definitely tries a lot of different stuff. I mean, what's the name of the album after The New Danger that he dropped? Like that was like his second album. It's kind of like a rap rock album, which is super weird. Yeah. I admire the experimentation, not so much I guess the execution. I think that is like his worst received album by like a wide margin. Yeah. But he does like try and incorporate more like, I guess, rock elements into his music than a typical hip hop artist would. So I could consider him a dual threat from that point of view.
Noted.
Yeah, I guess we call him like a genre bender.
Yeah, definitely.
Easily. But yeah, is that it? Is that all we got?
Yeah, I just wanted to once again say I think New World Water is like yeah, it's just I was listening to I just kept re-listening to Black on Both Sides because I knew we were doing this, and I don't even think that was like originally on like one of my favorite songs on the album, but in this like new like re-listening to it, I was just like, yo. And I think I've been reading a lot of Malcolm's speeches lately because I don't know, that's just where I am right now. Who knows? But it just made me think of Malcolm talking about like how like the blackness is like universal, like it's a global thing. And he was saying like, you know, the issue is like the black man in Harlem feels like he's isolated and like his issues are only his. But he's like, you know, once the black man in Harlem realizes the black man in Ghana and he have like the same issues, then we can like be connected on a global scale, and then we're like really a force. So then hearing Mos talk about like just like issues black people face in like different like areas, just shit, Mos. So I don't know. It just it touched me in a way like that I didn't expect it to, or that it hasn't touched me before. But yeah, I just think that song is something mean, something crazy.
I was the exact same way as Dre, where Love was like the first song that like really connected with me with Mos Def. And I thought like, okay, this is the one. Like this guy's nice. And listening to the album, I always liked Black on Both Sides as an album, but like we just re-listened to the experience, like New World Water really grabbed me in a way it hadn't in the past. I don't know if I just was like just skimming the music word Jay-Z. The first couple of times I'll listen to it, but this time I was like sitting there really listening to what he was saying. I was like, yo, this is an incredible ass song. And it's mostly because like me and Tommy said, where so much of what it says today applies to, so much of what it said then applies to today. Like literally that song could be dropped today and you would think he's speaking directly on what's happening in California, in the South, in the North, in Ghana, and all these other different countries. It's amazing. And like I don't think there's a lot of songs like that within music, period, that can talk so specifically about issues in the world, and then it translate 23 decades later. Like it's incredible. So
I think that, you know, everything you said, I think, you know, Daniel too, when talk about New World Water, but in this album specifically, I think that's one of the things that make this album a classic, just how relevant it is. Like if you can listen to it right now and it's still, the topics are still relevant, and, you know, we're still going through these things, unfortunately, but, you know, that's reality. I think that's one of the things that make it classic. You know, that's what makes Tupac so, one of the things that make him so revered, because everything he's talking about in 96 and 95, we still going through in 2020. So I think this album, I think that adds to the classic status of this album. Or if somebody wants to argue, you know, is this album a classic? It's like, well, you can listen to it right now, and he could drop this album right now, and I don't think it would sound too outdated because it's a timeless sound. You know, you got to think in 99, that was No Limit, Cash Money, Rockefeller, Bad Boy. Like, this don't sound nothing like any of that. So it's not a trendy sound. So I think even if he dropped this album today, you'd be like, okay, New World Water. Okay, well, we got the Flint crisis is going on, and everywhere else, you know, you got hip hop. Okay, that's still relevant. You know, Fear Not a Man, all of that. So I think all of that just culminates to this album being a classic, and not just hip hop and music in general, honestly.
Yeah, I definitely, it's 100% a classic. We were talking about, you know, it might not have had the biggest influence in terms of the aesthetics, the sounds, or the trends of future music, but I think it was incredibly relevant for what the subject matter actually is. Mm-hmm. You know, varying from song to song, people are still talking about the things. There are still things going on that are relevant to the music that he made. I was watching for like final prep for this Zoom call, I was watching the music video for Miss Fat Booty, and I saw someone in the comments say, "This is the first I fell in love with a stripper song." And I saw that, and I'm like, wait a minute. And then I thought back to T-Pain. I thought back to T-Pain's song, and I'm like, shit, he's kind of right. People are still making songs like that. So at the end of the day, the subject matter, I think, is what's influenced the most and what makes it really a classic. Just the way that everything you talked about is true to life and true to everyone's lives in one way or another, musically or not.
Word up. All right. We've been here a while. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Dre, for coming on. Thank you, Tommy. Daniel, as always, it was a pleasure having y'all, all three of you guys on. This was a lot of fun. Had a lot of great discussion about Mos Def. I'm glad we could sit here and talk about his music and like really bring life to it. Like we talked about earlier, he's almost a forgotten legend. You can almost call him more of a myth in hip hop. The fact that nobody really ever talks about him, except when it's like very hyper specific conversations. So it's good that we were able to give him an hour and 30 of our time today. And hopefully other people hear this and then think themselves, wait, what you say, Daniel?
Most in my top 10. So I don't know about nobody talk about him and all that. I talk about Most a lot.
Well, hopefully
you are right. Continue.
Hopefully well, not today, when this episode comes out, whenever it comes out, hopefully somebody hears it, inspires them to go listen to the album, and they be like, you know what, he's in my top 10 as well. So, like I said, thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Pop the Man Podcast. Tune in next week for the episode of your favorite podcast.